The Metro Bank Girls in Cricket Fund is about making change across all levels of volunteering and coaching in girls' recreational cricket and bringing more role models into the game. Key to this is making sure there are inspirational ECB coach developers at the top. That's why Metrobank and the ECB are currently identifying, supporting and selecting new female coach developers across England and Wales to encourage the coaches of tomorrow. To find out more, head to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket and listen on for later in this episode to hear from Sara Begg to hear about her experience as an ECB coach developer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly Podcast. The 100 is up and running. In this week's episode, we chat about the opening stages of the 100, including Lauren's Oval Invincibles starting off with a win in the curtain raiser in South London. There's chat about the differences between this tournament and others, how Lauren managed a potentially tricky on-field moment, as well as some chat on one of the best uncapped players in the country. First off, you'll hear my chat with Lauren, and then my conversation with Sara Begg, an ECB coach developer, about what coach developers do and why they are needed. Lauren, the Invincibles are off to a winning start, a pretty authoritative win over the Phoenix on Tuesday afternoon. It's a short and sharp competition, so a good feeling to get off the mark in game one.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably something we identified a little bit last year. We weren't great at home, and I think that can make a big difference to your comp. But yeah, it was more the manner, really. I think obviously it's good to get a win, but to be as dominant as what we were was awesome. And to be honest, like, it's hard to pinpoint where we sort of won the game. I think it was nearly as complete performance as what you can sort of ask for, really. Hopefully we haven't peaked at the first game. But yeah, really, really awesome start.
The 50s from Paige Schofield and Alice Capsey, and I saw Capsey say after the game that she felt like her job for a lot of that innings was just to knock it into a gap and get Schofield back on strike. It was some knock, probably like maybe the best I've seen in the 100 from an uncapped player. Serious ball striking, 71 or 40 in the end. Tell us a little bit about Paige Schofield as a player. She's been there or thereabouts in run scoring charts in domestic tournaments for a few years now.
I mean, there's a reason for that. I think she's one of the best players who hasn't played for England, to be honest. I think she's played in England Academy, England A sides for the last couple of years. The first I really saw of her was when we played against Australia last year in the before the Test match, and she got 100 against them in the sort of 3-day warm-up game beforehand. But yeah, she's someone. She made the switch from Vipers, and I think it was the best move for her career. Like, she wasn't getting an awful lot of opportunity there, and gone to Southeast Stars, Surrey, and blossomed really. I think she's got a really good relationship with Johan Myburg, who's obviously the head coach of Stars, but also our batting coach at the Ovals. But yeah, she's someone that sort of applied her trade a lot in the middle order. But we just felt like, she's somebody. Mibes actually called it when we said about putting her to the top of the order. He said, like, you can put a bowler up as a bit of a pinch hitter or whatever, but really their ceiling's probably 30 or 15 balls, whereas Paige is a genuine bat that could get 70 or 40, and that's the word for word, that's what Mibes said, and that's exactly what's happened. So Mystic Mibes called it.
You should try and get a prediction out of him ahead of every game.
I would say in our team meeting today, I say, right, what's happening tomorrow, Mime? Yeah, she played beautifully. I think that was the good thing about Capsey's knock. I remember speaking to her after the game, and I was like, it was just such a mature knock, because you felt like, I think it was an over where Paige hit 4 fours in a row against Elise Perry, and you sort of felt like Capsey, like a young player a year or so ago, will be like, oh, anything she can do, I can do better. But it was almost like, no, my role right now is to hand over the baton to Paige, and I think she's like, Capsey's matured so much in terms of just her game awareness and what's required.
Well, there's a lot of humility in that, really. Capsey's played 50 times for England, but, to have the humility to realise in that situation, Schofield's hitting the ball so well, her job, even as the England player, is to just get off strike. That's
Yeah,
actually really mature.
it is. And it's the no ego piece for me, isn't it? It's in terms of you're not trying to match it or better what Paige is doing. It's just not, accepting that she's having a bit of a day out here. She's a massively valued member of our team, and I think she's really taken just that extra responsibility and being a bit of a key cog to what we're doing. And like you say, it removes ego and just get a bit of humility because it's what the team needs.
Just on Schofield again, you don't get late debuts for England, really. If you go back in the last 20 years, Holly Armitage is the only player to debut after turning 25. So it's a really rare thing. And I guess it's something we might expect to happen more now that we have the professionalization on the scale that we do. I guess really not very long ago, if you were 22 or 23 years old and you were outside the England setup, you were left with very few career opportunities. And now I guess like having the full-time structure means that players who might develop slightly later have the space to do that.
Yeah, I think some like people talk about age a lot, and I think I like to use the term cricket age because you can have a 25-year-old that's got a cricket age of 3, in terms of how long have you been a professional for, how long have you been exposed to the professional game for. And I think you're better off judging someone on their cricket age rather than their actual age because, like somebody like Paige has been around the domestic structure since it's gone fully professional. But before that hadn't been around, England A consistently and, playing against international A teams and things like that. So her actual exposure, and even at Vipers, she was very underused, I think. She didn't have a lot of exposure in sort of key positions with the bat there. So I think you'll see more and more of that in terms of people debuting. Like, who's to say you can't debut at 30? If you're going to play for another, 5 or 6 years, you could still have 5 or 6 years at international level. And I think the volume of cricket that we're now seeing is you're going to see that more and more because you won't have the same people playing every single game in the international calendar.
I've got to ask you about a moment at the start of the Phoenix run chase. Susie Bates pats the ball back to Marizanne Kapp, who takes a shot at the stumps. The ball goes towards Bates at shin high. Bates defends it with her bat, and it's all smiles. Looks like everyone's moving on, but you get hit with a 5-run penalty. You're as captain, you're the person who speaks to the umpires. Talk me through your feelings as that was unfolding.
Yeah, I just sort of express. Well, I think it was twofold. It was, it would have genuinely hit the stumps, so you can tell that it's an opportunity trying to be taken to hit the stumps because it, like you say, it hits a shin height in front of all three. So that was sort of my argument. We sort of felt like Bates was looked like she might be trying to take a run and make a move as well. I know she didn't advance down and stuff like that, but you sort of felt like her body language and movement down the crease was that she was looking for something. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's not hugely dangerous at shin height with pads on in front of the ball three. But we know that the rules are very strict on that this year, particularly. Unless it's blatantly obvious that they're taking a run, and you're trying to run them out, then you just can't throw it. And I think Cappy was, I'm sorry, and you could see that it was all in jest. She was smiling straight away. Batesy was smiling straight away. It's quite a knee-jerk reaction for Cappy because she's, that's what if she feels like a batter's trying to sneak a run, she's a competitor, and she's so used to just picking it up and having a shy, that it's almost so instinctive.
Yeah, I was looking at the regulations. So the regulations say that throwing the ball at a player, umpire, or another person in an immediate or dangerous manner is a level 2 offence, and with that is a 5-run penalty. But I guess dangerous is so subjective, and in that case, I think it was pretty clear that Cap was aiming for the stumps and Bates had left her ground. I guess the other part of it is that you in that moment at the start of the defence. I guess there's a level of feeling aggrieved that one's gone against you. So as captain, do you almost have to like calm the troops down a little bit to be like, we move on, we put that behind us, and almost forget it?
Yeah, I sort of made a conscious effort to not even like rush over to the umpire and sort of just like everyone just stay where you are. Like, everyone's like, what's going on? It's like just everyone stay where you are, let's just chill. Almost trying to take the sting out of it. I think sometimes the more you sort of dive in and hype it and whatnot, I was like, yeah, like I made a bit of a conscious effort to just sort of remain behind the stumps. Sue obviously then called me over. I wasn't going to go running over to her initially because I was almost trying to take the sting out of it and just say, look, like obviously in my opinion, I didn't feel like it was dangerous, hence why I'm still stood behind the stumps and have not come charging over. But yeah, you're just trying to take the edge off it really in that scenario. I think it's like anything. It's like if somebody dives in, then everyone's like diving in and adding their 10 penneth. And I think, that's when you get into the bits where you end up getting disciplinaries or things like that because everybody wants a piece of it. So yeah, it's just one of them things, fortunately it didn't cost us. And really, like, the almost just taking Cappy then out the firing line a little bit and then bring her back is probably how we sort of try to mitigate that situation, really.
No, managed very well. Before we started recording, you were talking me through the peculiarities of training in between matches for the 100, because you've got men's side, women's side, the home side, the away side, plus potentially counties, men's county side as well. So you potentially have, what's that? Um, 2, 4, so maybe 6 teams wanting to use the same ground on a given day. So does that just mean you train less than you ideally would like to?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the ideal in comp's probably different to the ideal in a less congested competition. It's probably easier to overdo it than underdo it in these sorts of scenarios where, like, there's a lot to be said for being fresh and mentally ready and things like that. But yeah, you basically get like a 2 hour window, really, to get your team through. But when you think that we feel like I feel like we've got about 25 players. We've got that many. We got that many. We got nearly got half a world 11 with on the roster. But yeah, like we got a lot of players to get through. And it is probably one of those where you just have to prioritize your primary skill. Things like group fielding get compromised because you just don't get, group fielding with a warm up, etc., is half an hour, and then you've got no time left to play with. And it's all blocked, so often where you sort of think, oh, your bowlers might get a bat at the end and you just run over a little bit. You've basically got a men's team or one of the other women, like we're 2 till 4 today, but then there'll be a team in 4 till 6. So, the minute the clock hand changes, you're done.
Is there any waiting in the sidelines, tapping your watch, that sort of thing?
Yeah, like well, some teams are there and they're almost like, like the S&C's got the warm up out straight away, and it's, you really can't go over. You've got to get out of there. We're quite big on like whiteboard sessions the day before a game, so it's very much individual prep, and you just say what you want, and you get, whatever you want. If you don't want to do anything, no dramas. If you want to just do underarms or you want to do face bowlers or whatever, it's very much individual prep, but. That is one of the challenges in the comp, and it's the lovely thing about it with the men's and women's sides, side by side. But it is one of the challenges is you've got an awful lot of people to get through one facility.
You've been working on games for Sky as well, so you'd have seen a lot of the other action. I'm just going to run through some of the other games so far. So Spirit beat the Brave in a classic. Heather Knight's 65 or 31, getting her team over the line in the run chase. It felt like the Brave let them into that a bit, drop catches that are normally taken, and a couple of overs where they weren't quite on it with the ball, but a really good game.
Yeah, I think massive credit to Heather. I think she hasn't had loads of opportunities really of late with it to show that real match winning sort of characteristics that she possesses. It did felt like it was the one that got away a bit for the Brave in terms of probably putting your least experienced bowlers under the most pressure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you don't really want to bowl an awful lot of spin or particularly off spin to Heather Knight, because she's such a good player of spin. That was probably my biggest observations from it was, your Charlie Knotts, your Tilly Cutting, Coleman, there's a lot of inexperience there that had to bowl the toughest sets, overs, whatever you want to call it. But credit to Heather, it sort of felt like I watched it to a point and I was like, well, it's Dunsky here. Like, they're not going to chase nearly two a ball, but you can never take that away from someone. That's a big individual effort.
Yeah, no, I mean, striking at 210 at the end of that innings. And Thursday we saw Sophia Dunkley play a similar-ish innings for Welsh Fire in their chase against the Originals. And then yesterday we saw the ball of the tournament, I think, from Alana King with her first delivery of the tournament. Her catalogue of best deliveries is just up there with anyone. It's ridiculous. She produces balls like that so frequently. I must confess, I've always willed her to do well because she's born on exactly the same day as me. So even though that's completely irrational, I've always thought, go on, Alana, do it for us, November 22nders. She does this so often.
Poor old Bess Heath,
Yeah.
first delivery. You don't want to come out when your feet aren't quite moving and you're just getting yourself into the game. You don't want to face that first up. But that's the beauty of I played with Kingy at Perth, and she's just a wicket taker. Her best ball can get anybody out. And I think she's a massive threat for Trent Rockets. It was a funny game really because you sort of felt like at the halfway point, the Superchargers would have been absolutely licking their lips to be chasing, such a low total. But it was one of those things where you sort of you rattle through the top order pretty quickly, and the game. I think the thing is with the 100 was I was saying this on Sky the other day because there was actually a moment where the Welsh Fire and Manchester Originals, I think it was about 70 balls, and it was actually really game on. Fee Morris bowled a set of five, and you felt like if she'd have gone again instead of Catherine Bryce, it could have been a lot closer than it was. And we were just sort of saying that the beauty of the 100 is it changes so quickly, and it's same in the Spirit and Brave. You almost feel like 15 balls and the game is completely flipped on its head. Whereas T20 cricket, you don't feel like it changes that quick in 2 overs.
100%. 100%. I was going to say, do you think it's the five ball thing? So like you can sort of, as a bowling side, you can sort of escape out of an over quickly, if that makes sense. You just don't have that last ball. Like so often in T20 cricket, the bowler's won the first five balls in an over and the six goes for six, whatever. As a bowling side, you can just, I don't know, create that pressure and also the option of having, you can bowl 10 balls in a row. But also you do get occasions where set batters are just like, don't get on strike for ages or like in a 20 ball period only face two or three balls. It does feel like games in the 100 can sort of snowball quicker than in any normal T20 competition.
Yeah, 100%. Like I completely agree. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's certainly a feel of, yeah, like just using the Spirit Brave game as an example, the Fire Originals, and the last sort of three games really it just felt like it was so obviously going to be one way, and then all of a sudden it was the opposite. And it sort of swung within 10 or 15 balls, which I think is awesome. I think it gets a lot of stick the 100, but things like that, those intricacies and the subtle changes, it does mean that you're never really out of it either way, unless there's obviously a huge margin. But yeah, it almost, like I said, the game that the Welsh Fire Manchester game, I reckon 5 or 10 balls. If Fee Morris had bowled another five, and made it go 10 in a row, the game could have been very differently. Like there's a lot of little intricacies that can make a big difference.
Well, Lauren, cheers for your time. You're 1 from 1 at the time of recording. Hopefully, in a couple of days' time, you're 2 from 2.
Yeah, let's hope so.
So first of all, talk me through your cricketing background. How did you first get into coaching?
How did I first get into coaching? So I played junior cricket at Finchley Cricket Club, which is not that far from where we are today. And pretty much the only girls there, me and my sister. But the head coach there was a guy called Tim Selwood. And when I was about 14 or so, was like, we need people to help out with the under-9s. Will you come and help out with the under-9s? So I was like, yeah, of course I will, no problem. And then when I got to 16, it was like, go and do your level 1. And it's kind of a never look back kind of moment there. I was proper shy as a kid. And I think Tim kind of saw that coaching was a way for me to get out of myself a little bit. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
So you immediately saw the benefits that coaching have for yourself, but how early on was it that where you started to see the benefits coaching more broadly has for the structures around club cricket, etc.?
So I often think about that my journey as a coach is influenced by the people who coached me. And so I could see very early on that coaches had a fundamental impact on my life as someone who was, like I say, extremely shy, not very confident about my place in the world, I guess. And so cricket gave me that, and that was mostly because of the skill of the coaches who I was lucky enough to play under. And then when I started coaching, my first coaching role really was with Capital Kids Cricket, who do a lot of sort of playground-based community cricket coaching in sort of East London. And it was sort of almost before Chance to Shine was really a big thing. And again, that was the sort of transformational effect of inclusive, fun coaching on a group of kids who maybe had never seen cricket before. And by the end of it, A, could play a decent game of quick cricket, but B, really enjoyed it and really loved the game and had come together as a group of young people. So
could you notice the effect on individuals even in a short space of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it will take a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3, but when people sort of start to connect, I think, with the atmosphere almost, or the spirit of how the sessions are run and organised, then you quite quickly can see a change in, I wouldn't say personalities necessarily, but the sense of ownership, a sense of belonging, which can have a really positive effect on young people.
So I'm involved in my cricket club, and I'm on the club committee, and I'm always struck by how much has to go on behind the scenes to get a game between 22 people on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the most underappreciated roles is that of a coach. And you have a lot of coaches who volunteer, a lot of coaches who are paid. Are there enough coaches? Are there some areas in the country where we don't have enough?
There's never enough coaches.
Okay.
I think, it's a real testament to a lot of the work that clubs are doing up and down the country, Chance to Shine are doing in schools, that there's a huge demand, particularly at the sort of All-Stars and Dynamos level, for cricket. And the big challenge now is how do we fulfill that demand as those young people move out of those age groups and come into sort of what we might traditionally have thought of as like under 11s, under 13s, club cricket in particular. And the resource to get those games on is vital, and coaches are central to that. And I live in Yorkshire now, my own cricket club. One of the biggest things that I focus on is, how can I be the Tim Selwood to the next group of young people and say, get involved in coaching. Same thing to parents, are you interested in the game? Do you want to help out? Because without coaches, without those volunteers, like games don't happen. People don't come regularly to training because it's not fun and it's not busy and active, because if there's just one coach and 24 kids, you're never going to create that really buzzy atmosphere. And so people don't stay in the game and the game doesn't grow. So I think there's always going to be demand for more coaches, but particularly when we're doing such a good job now at the younger end, that need for coaches is just going to accelerate, and particularly in the women and girls game.
So I was going to ask, anecdotally, I've heard at least of stories where, for example, at university cricket clubs, where the men's team is well stocked with coaches, but the women's team isn't. And I've heard similar things around cricket clubs where the men's side is really well stocked with coaches, but the women's side isn't. Is it a bigger problem with women's cricket, particularly as the girls get to older age?
I think part of the issue there, to an extent, is essentially what you're doing is doubling the playing population potentially. And yes, there's maybe a prioritisation at sort of an elite level around sort of the men's teams and things like that. I think that's becoming less and less of a issue as people's eyes are opened to the necessity of like an equitable approach to coaching, but also, the exciting opportunities that women's cricket presents. But actually at a grassroots level, it's literally just like there's suddenly all this extra demand and not enough people necessarily to do it. And also as well, I think, if you've got dads of girls, they'll often be sort of willing to do it. But certainly the experience that I've had up to now for some, maybe a male head coach of a junior section is it's a bit sort of almost intimidating. Like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do here. Like, how can I make sure that this girls' cricket grows in a really positive way? I've had an interesting experience at a tournament literally just a couple of days ago for sort of an under-11s introductory girls' cricket tournament, where one of the teams came up to me and said at the end, because they brought their sort of boys' head coach along with the team, and he'd said to her afterwards, this has really opened my eyes to actually like the potential for girls cricket. We need to do something, but I just don't have the capacity. Like, what are we going to do? And then sort of starting to identify, well, maybe some of these women who are in the softball team can now start doing their coaching qualifications and get involved and help run those sides. So I guess the crux of the matter is, yes, it might be under-resourced at the moment. It's probably not through lack of will. It's through the rate of change, and we're desperately playing catch up, but there are great opportunities to get people involved. It's just about having conversations with people and really, I think, empowering people to believe that, coaching girls is not a complicated matter. We just need to make sure that we take it seriously and sort of just be a bit strategic and think ahead, which is difficult in clubs. If you're involved in club cricket, you're worrying about next Sunday and maybe the Sunday after that if you're really lucky, but you're not thinking about sort of 9 months' time. But we do need to sort of try and nudge ourselves to think, okay, how can we be thinking that slightly longer term to make sure that we're resourced at this end?
So you're a national coach developer.
Yes.
If you were speaking to someone who's listening to this, who's thinking about getting into coaching, what would you say? Where would you recommend someone to start?
So where would I recommend to start? Get on and do it. So absolutely, coaching qualifications are a really useful tool, and keep your eye out. The ECB Foundation course is fantastic. It's 2 days long. Often there'll be courses that are specifically about trying to increase the number of female coaches involved. Often there are bursaries available. The ECB core coach is, a higher level qualification, got much more technical, tactical content. But the first thing to do for me is sort of stick your hand up and say, I'll give it a go. And if you're at your local cricket club, go along on the Friday night and go up to the head coach and say, can I help?
And it doesn't have to be a massive commitment initially. You can try it out without devoting so much time.
Absolutely. You don't want to end up like me, spending hours and hours and hours of your life in doing things.
My final question was going to be, now you have spent hours and hours of your life coaching. Yeah. What looking back, would you say you have found the most rewarding in the long run?
I think it's when I see, actually, to be honest, nowadays, it's when I see women who I connected with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when they were first starting out in their involvement in cricket, who are now, taking on leadership roles at their club, taking on coaching roles, bringing teams of little girls to our festivals for the first time, because it feels like there's like a sustainable culture there of girls playing cricket and women playing cricket. And I think when you know that you've had a positive impact on someone's life, sometimes just through like a conversation, to say, you absolutely should go and do the foundation coach course, you'll be brilliant. It's not as scary as you think it's going to be. When that bears fruit down the line of maybe 30 other women and girls now playing the game, that's the best feeling for me.
That sounds like a very good feeling. Well, thank you so much for your time and best of luck.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
That is everything for today's show. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks for listening. The Metrobank Girls in Cricket Fund impacts all levels of volunteers and coaches of girls cricket. Why not see how you can get involved yourself and give back to your local community to champion the future of girls cricket? Head to metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket to find out more.